I, 26F, stood frozen at the altar as my sister Sarah grabbed the microphone. The words that came out of her mouth next made my fiancé Mark turn pale as a ghost. "I have a secret to tell," she announced to the packed church. My heart stopped. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the moment everything I thought I knew crumbled to pieces. Let me back up 6 months. That's when the signs started. Though I was too blind to see them, Mark and I had been together for 3 years. He was everything I thought I wanted: charming, successful, and attentive. When he proposed on my birthday with my whole family watching, I said yes without hesitation. My younger sister Sarah seemed thrilled for us. She hugged Mark and welcomed him to the family with tears in her eyes. After our engagement, Mark started spending more time with Sarah. At first, I thought it was sweet. He'd take her for coffee when I was working late. He'd buy her little gifts, saying he wanted to be the best brother-in-law possible. When I mentioned it seemed like a lot, he laughed and kissed my forehead. "Baby, she's going to be my sister too. I just want your family to love me as much as you do," he said. The coffee dates became more frequent. Sometimes I'd come home to find them on the couch, deep in conversation. They'd stop talking the moment I walked in. "Just discussing your birthday surprise," Mark would say with that perfect smile. Sarah would nod and quickly excuse herself. I pushed down the weird feeling in my stomach. This was Mark, the man who brought me flowers every week, the man who held me when my grandmother passed. He wouldn't betray me. Then came the business trip incident. Mark said he had to fly to Chicago for a conference. I offered to drive him to the airport, but he insisted on taking an Uber. "You sleep in, sweetheart. It's too early," he said. That same weekend, Sarah was supposedly visiting her college roommate in Boston. I spent the weekend alone, catching up on work and wedding planning. Sunday night, Sarah came back glowing. She showed me pictures from her trip, scrolling quickly through her phone, but I saw it. One photo she swiped past too fast. Mark and Sarah at Navy Pier in Chicago, his arm around her shoulders. My blood ran cold. When I asked to see her phone again, she said her battery had died. I confronted Mark when he got home. "Were you with Sarah in Chicago?" I asked. His face changed for just a second before the smile returned. "What? No, baby. Why would you think that?" he said. When I told him about the photo, he sighed deeply. "Okay, you caught me. I was planning something special for the wedding with Sarah's help. She knows your taste better than anyone. We wanted it to be a surprise, but I guess the cat's out of the bag," he said. He pulled me close and stroked my hair. "You're being paranoid, love. Pre-wedding jitters are normal, but you have to trust me." "Have I ever given you a reason not to?" he asked. I felt foolish. Of course Mark wouldn't cheat on me with my own sister. What kind of person would do that? I apologized for doubting him. The wedding planning continued. Sarah threw herself into helping me choose flowers, taste cakes, and pick out decorations. She seemed more excited than I was sometimes. "You're so lucky," she'd say, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't read. Mark became more affectionate than ever, constantly telling me how much he loved me, how perfect our life would be. But the whispers didn't stop. I'd walk into rooms to find them huddled together, jumping apart when they saw me. Mark's phone was suddenly password protected. He'd step outside to take calls, claiming they were about work. Sarah started avoiding my eyes during family dinners. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd force a smile and change the subject. 2 weeks before the wedding, I found a receipt in Mark's jacket pocket. A hotel booking for 2 nights in Chicago with 2 adult breakfasts charged to the room. My hands shook as I held it. When I showed it to him, he had an explanation ready. "My colleague John crashed in my room. Company wouldn't pay for 2 rooms. You can call him if you want," he said. I didn't call. I wanted to believe him so badly that I accepted every excuse. The morning of our wedding arrived. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, Sarah already there with coffee and a nervous smile. "Today's the big day," she said, her voice strange. As she helped me into my dress, her hands trembled. "Are you okay?" I asked. She nodded quickly, tears in her eyes. I just want you to be happy, she said. The ceremony was beautiful. The church was packed with family and friends. Mark stood at the altar, looking handsome in his tuxedo, though I noticed he kept glancing at Sarah in her bridesmaid dress. We exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other forever. The priest was about to pronounce us husband and wife when Sarah suddenly stood up. Wait, she called out, grabbing the microphone from the singer. The entire church turned to stare. My heart pounded as she walked toward us, her face pale but determined. I have a secret to tell, she announced. Mark's face drained of all color. His hand gripped mine so tight it hurt. Sarah looked directly at me, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But I can't let you do this. I can't let you marry him without knowing the truth, she said. The church was silent, except for the sound of my heart breaking before she even spoke the next words. Mark and I have been having an affair, she said. Gasps echoed through the church. My mother stood up, then sat back down in shock. I couldn't breathe. The words didn't make sense. This had to be a nightmare. Those business trips were with me. The conference in Chicago, the client dinner in Miami, the training in Denver. We were together, she continued. Mark dropped my hand and stepped forward. Sarah, what are you doing? Why are you lying? He said, his voice desperate. But Sarah pulled out her phone, connecting it to the church's speaker system. Mark's voice filled the space, clear as day. I love you, Sarah. But we have to wait until after the wedding. Once I have access to her trust fund, we can be together for real. Just a few more months of pretending, the recording said. The church erupted. My father lunged toward Mark, held back by my uncles. Mark turned to me, his mask finally off, panic in his eyes. Baby, I can explain. It's not what it sounds like, he said. But I wasn't listening anymore. Everything made sense now. Every whisper, every secret smile, every excuse. I pulled off my engagement ring and threw it at his face. It hit him in the cheek, leaving a small cut. Get out, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Get out, I screamed. Mark looked around the church at the sea of angry faces. My cousins were already moving toward him. He actually ran out of the church in his tuxedo. Sarah approached me slowly, like I was a wounded animal. I know you hate me. I deserve it. But I couldn't let you marry him. The affair started 6 months ago. He pursued me, said he'd made a mistake choosing you. I was weak and stupid, and I betrayed you, she said. But when I found out about the trust fund, about his plan to divorce you after getting the money, I knew I had to stop it, she continued. I should have been angry at her. I was angry. But in that moment, all I felt was free. Free from the manipulation, the gaslighting, the constant doubt that I was crazy for suspecting something. My sister had saved me from a lifetime of lies, even though she'd participated in the betrayal. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked. Sarah hung her head. I tried. But every time I got close, I'd remember how happy you looked. And Mark said if I told you, you'd never speak to me again. He said he'd tell everyone I seduced him, that I was jealous of you. I was a coward, she said. But standing there, watching you about to promise your life to him, I couldn't do it anymore, she added. The wedding guests slowly filed out, some stopping to hug me, others to whisper their shock. My parents stayed, my mother holding me as I cried. Not tears of sadness, but of relief. The man I thought I loved never existed. He was a con artist who saw my trust fund and decided to play the long game. Later, I found out the truth went even deeper. Mark had done this before. Sarah had hired a private investigator with her own money after growing suspicious of his stories. He'd been engaged twice before, both times to women with family money, both relationships ending mysteriously when the women discovered the truth too late. One had already married him and lost half her inheritance in the divorce. Sarah gave me all the evidence she'd collected. Photos of Mark with other women during our relationship, not just her. Messages where he bragged to friends about his gold-digging masterpiece. Even a fake identity he'd used in another state. The man I knew as Mark Thompson was actually Marcus Thierry, a serial scammer with a pattern. The would-be wedding reception became something else entirely. My family and true friends stayed. We ate the expensive food, drank the champagne, and celebrated my narrow escape. Sarah didn't attend. She knew she wasn't welcome yet, though she'd ultimately saved me. That would take time to process. Mark tried to contact me for weeks afterward. Emails, calls from different numbers, even showing up at my work until security removed him. He threatened to sue for emotional distress, claimed I'd humiliated him. My lawyer, paid for with the trust fund he'd never touch, sent him a cease and desist letter along with copies of Sarah's evidence. He disappeared after that, probably hunting for his next target. Sarah and I didn't speak for 2 months. The betrayal cut deep, sister or not. But eventually, I reached out. She'd been manipulated too, targeted because she was my weakness. Mark had studied us, known exactly how to drive a wedge between us while keeping me blind. When we finally talked, really talked, she told me everything. How he'd made her feel special, then guilty, then trapped. How he'd convinced her that telling me would destroy our family. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said. I know what I did was unforgivable, but I needed you to know that stopping that wedding was the hardest and most important thing I've ever done, she said. It took time, therapy, and brutal honesty, but we slowly rebuilt our relationship. Not the same as before, but perhaps stronger for having survived such deception. A year later, I received a message from a woman named Jennifer. She was engaged to a man named Mitchell Torres, who looked exactly like Mark. She'd found my story online after searching for similar experiences. Her fiancé was charming, attentive, and very interested in her recent inheritance. I gave her everything I had on Mark, and she called off her engagement the next day. Today, 3 years after my almost wedding, I run a support group for women who've been targeted by financial predators. Sarah comes sometimes, sharing her perspective as someone who was manipulated into becoming a weapon against her own sister. We've helped expose 12 men like Mark, saving women from financial and emotional ruin. Mark, or Marcus, or whatever he calls himself now, is on law enforcement's radar. There's an investigation into fraud charges, though he's slippery enough to stay just within legal boundaries. But his face is all over the survivor networks now. His days of easy marks are over. Every woman he approaches seems to mysteriously learn about his past within weeks. Sometimes I think about that moment in the church, Sarah standing with the microphone, shaking but determined. It was the worst moment of my life that became the best thing that ever happened to me. She saved me from years of lies, financial ruin, and emotional abuse. The betrayal hurt, but the alternative would have been so much worse. The trust fund Mark wanted so badly. I used it to start a nonprofit that provides legal services to women escaping financial abuse. It's called Sarah's Stand, named after the bravest thing my sister ever did. She stood up when it mattered most, even though it cost her everything, even though she knew I might never forgive her. The wedding dress still hangs in my closet, not as a reminder of pain, but of survival, of the day I learned that sometimes the people who hurt us most are also the ones who save us. That truth can come from the most unexpected places, and that walking away from something that looks perfect on the outside but is rotten on the inside isn't failure. It's freedom. Mark is out there somewhere, probably spinning his web around another unsuspecting woman. But he's running out of places to hide. We talk, us survivors, we share photos, stories, warning signs. He thinks he's a predator, but he's become the prey. And somewhere my sister Sarah is living with her choices, knowing she sacrificed her relationship with me to save me from a monster. That's real love. Complicated and messy and painful, but real. I never got my fairy tale wedding. Instead, I got something better. I got the truth. I got my freedom. And eventually, I got my sister back. Mark got exactly what he deserved. Nothing.